So one of our community events at the end is going to be a Turtleford and an event in Turtleford. And I had teased this interesting story last week, but Sean was, running on tight time. And so I didn't get to it. But what happened was back in the day, rig crew finished working like a month straight. And we decided to stop in Turtleford for one beer on the way home. And they were having this band at the bar. A is A. I don't even know why I remember it. And anyway, we're out on the patio before this band came on. We hadn't even decided to stick around for it at that point. They were awesome. And the town drunk is out there on the patio. And he's like, "Oh, you guys here for the show?" I'm like, "No, we hadn't heard about it." And he says, "Oh, I'm opening for them." I'm like, what do you mean? He says, yeah, last time I got skidded, but this time it's going to be different. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And he says, well, I'm going to open for them. Like, with what? You're just sitting here drinking. And he's like, hold on a sec. I'll be right back. He goes running outside around this like tall fence that surrounds the whole thing, comes back a couple minutes later. He's got drumsticks, bongo drums, this coconut hat with seashells on it, and a didgeridoo. And he proceeds to just play the most god-awful kids banging on pots and pans bullshit you've ever seen in your life. He's shaking his head around with the coconut shells, and he's banging the drumsticks on the table and tapping glasses and playing the bongo drums. And then he starts just like wailing on this didgeridoo, like, wah! This thing's probably like 3.5, 4 feet tall. And
what does Sean usually do during this? Does he normally interrupt you when you're just going on one of these crazy rants?
Yeah, generally, yeah, he'll jump in a little bit. But anyways, the owner comes out, grabs the didgeridoo, and she's like, "If I told you once, I told you 100 fucking times," and then just yeets it over this fence. And I have no, like, was there a car parked there? I have no idea. Anyways, and then he just looks at us all bashfully, and he's like, "Yeah, I got skidded this time, but I got skidded with style." Anyways, that's Turtleford.
Well, there you go, Turtleford. Welcome to Mashup 96. I'm your host, Sean Newman, which is, of course, not true. I'm Vance Crowe, and I am sitting in for the great Sean Newman. And with me today is Twos. Twos, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Kind of mixed feelings about this a little bit. I'm not sure if you heard about this. I don't know if everybody knows, but we're here today because Sean is dead. Sean has passed away. And that's why Vance is here.
Oh, you have a whole slideshow here. This is deep. It's really kind of you.
Never forget you, Sean. He
does look a lot younger in a lot of these photos.
Some of them, yeah. Well, I mean, he's never going to look older now. So, anyway, it's tragic, but he was cleaning out a chicken coop, and I'm sure growing up in rural middle America, but there's nothing slipperier in the world than wet chicken shit. And he slipped and he cracked his egg, so he died a rooster slipper, and we'll never forget him. And this is our new host of the show, Vance.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I hope we don't have to change the name. I really like the whole Sean Newman Presents. All the whole brand is really something that'd be nice to just step right into.
Yes, it's great that he built up this brand for us. So, how you doing over there, man?
Oh man, yeah. It pains me to tell you this, but it was 75 degrees and sunny out. It's been that way for the last 3 days. We've started to get trees with little green leaves and flower buds on them. So life is grand down here in St. Louis, Missouri.
That's just an awful thing to say when it's minus 20 outside here right now, which for you American listeners is, I don't know, probably about minus 15. Minus 10?
It doesn't sound pretty, whatever it is. Anything below 0 is pretty bad.
Yeah, it's probably somewhere around there. Anyway, but yeah, so Vance, as everybody here I'm sure knows or is about to find out, does these cool things called legacy interviews. Do you want to talk about those for a couple minutes before we get going?
Yeah, sure. So I record people telling their life stories, whether they're individuals or couples, so that way
Mhm.
future generations have an opportunity to know their family history. So people either come into my studio here in St. Louis, and people have traveled from all over the US and Canada to do that, or
Mhm.
we do them online. So sometimes we'll do them with just individuals, or a family will do them. So like a mom will go, a dad will go, we'll take a break, and then mom and dad will go together. It's a really neat thing. And at the end, we send you a video of each one of the interviews, lightly edited, and it really makes your parents look and sound great, and gives them a chance to capture all those stories that you're like, man, I really hope we can get those one day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad Sean didn't do one. Now it's too late. Okay, so you got a new website though, right?
I do, a brand new website. It's actually a lot more work to put up a website than I ever remember. You know, when you're setting one up for just podunk reasons, it's no big deal. But we had to bring in like a real photographer. We did
Ooh.
little interviews with people. We got a chance to kind of show what is it like to do a legacy interview,
Mhm.
and it's something I'm pretty proud of. And I think you know, it's one of those things on our website. We always talk about like everyone should be doing this, and if you can't do it yourself, like if we're not the right choice for you,
Mhm.
we're trying to put up as much advice and counsel on how to do it, what kinds of questions to ask, so that everybody should do it, because everybody should be sitting down with their family members, even if you don't record it. If all you're doing is just talking with your family about their
Mhm.
family stories, I think that's like one of the things that our society needs most, is an understanding of where we came from and who we are.
I think that's pretty fair, and there's a lot of really interesting stories. You know, there's I mean, think about how much things have changed since we were kids, let alone since, the generation older than us were, you know, just getting things like electricity and plumbing in their houses.
Yeah,
There's
that's no joke. Like, and the Canadians that have come down, they have all these crazy stories. I mean, it's only like one generation ago that they were living with, you know, outhouses and no electricity. That is legit what was going on just, you know, 60 years
in
ago.
in the igloos.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now before we get going, I have two small corrections to make. 2 episodes ago, I had talked about Turtle Island, which very fortuitously, but the opposite of that, happened to be this tiny little island right by this area that we were talking about. It turns out that Turtle Island is not some place in cottage country it is, but the Turtle Island that I was speaking to apparently is the Aboriginal term for the world, and I wasn't aware of that. And the other correction we need to make is that Sean likes to go on and on, waxing poetic about how Andrew Lawton first told him about the idea of creating situations where politicians do the right thing regardless. Create environments where it's set up so that they do the right thing regardless of what's going on. And that's not where he heard it from first. The first time he ever heard it was at roughly the 26 minute mark of episode 178, where I was on and I told him that.
I wondered how you knew that.
So anyway, the next time he says that, text him and correct him. All right. Oh, and I didn't have a chance to look it up, but Ontario by-election is the first thing that we were going to go to, and shoot, I haven't looked it up yet. Sorry, guys. You'll have to tune in next week when we talk about the by-election. So, we had in memoriam by-election, more like by-election, and I literally just got home, so I haven't had a chance to brush up on that. And now, what we're gonna do that's different tonight, and we might keep it going forward, is that Vance hasn't seen these headlines yet, and he's just gonna read them all for the first time as they pop up.
Total eclipse of the brain.
Yeah. So this is about the eclipse that's happening and the teachers in Ontario who want to move their PD day so that they get a day off during the eclipse.
Yeah, and your education minister lost his marbles and started basically saying, "Look, everybody else is going to work, and why can't you?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when we have a professional activity day with notice, we can tolerate that. What we won't tolerate is indiscriminately closing schools."
Okay. I don't know if things are the same or not in the States, but when I was going to school, I feel like any and every teacher would have just been absolutely ecstatic to have a total eclipse happening while school was going on, and they would have made it a huge thing. Like the math teachers, everybody would have been talking about it, whether it was in their field or not. They would have just been, like, this is super exciting. We're going to teach you about it in the weeks leading up to it. And then we're going to go outside and we're going to watch it with pinhole cameras or whatever. And here's the other thing is that they're worried about safety and whatnot because there's an eclipse happening. The totality of the eclipse is happening somewhere between 2 minutes and 4 seconds and 3 minutes and 4 seconds, depending on where you're at in Ontario. They're literally bailing for the sake of 3 minutes of darkness.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I remember from doing eclipses with school is that they were
Mhm.
telling you ad nauseum that you had to wear those glasses, which of
Mhm.
course probably is the most dangerous thing you can tell like a sixth grade boy, because then he's
Yeah,
like,
because they're
yeah,
gonna
but
be like,
how?
"Well, what happens if I
Yeah,
don't?"
right. And really, what you need to do is to see that one kid take off his sunglasses and see what happens to him. And then you get to take yours off. But if you were at home alone, imagine how much more dangerous that would be. You'd have to do that to your little brother or just the
Yeah.
neighborhood kid.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
just
lot better to
look up
sacrifice the
look
randos.
I like it, I like it. That's good. Okay. Buzz me up, and we'll go to the next one.
Oh yeah, that's right. I gotta. This is
Yeah. Alright.
Maloney trip a melon. Oh, Maloney trip a melon. I understand now. So
Okay.
this is the Italian prime minister
Mhm.
who decided she was going to make a trip to Canada, where they had some pretty rough words beforehand, or I guess they hadn't really done very well, Trudeau and Melanie, and the from all the articles I read, didn't look so good, and then the protesters stepped in.
Yeah, so she was supposed to make an appearance with Trudeau, and a whole bunch of Palestine protesters showed up and totally just threw everything in the works. And then also, here is a picture of her face while she's looking at Justin. So, those of you listening and not looking, it's that look that your wife gives you when you fart on the dog.
Yes, or you like drunkenly walk up to your boss and tell him you want a day off the next day or something, right? Like this is like a total disapproval. There's
Yeah,
no less like that she could have.
like,
And what's
just
hilarious,
yeah.
it took like 5 minutes for me to understand what the articles were saying, because all of your outlets kept just referring to her as the far right extremist. The far right extremist that was going
Mhm.
on in Italy, and how she's impacting Europe to become far right, and it was like every other term in there describing her in this way to make sure that you didn't have any respect for her or like her in any way.
Yes, so that is fairly typical of Canadian media. They like to slant things. They compared her to Mussolini multiple times, and I don't know if you like I put it in the show notes, and I don't know if you picked up on the significance of it, but here is the Wikipedia article for Mussolini, and it mentions socialist exactly 58 times.
Oh yeah, I
And
mean, he's just a total socialist. He was just
yeah,
like the Nazi
yeah,
party was the
the
socialist
National
movement.
Socialist Party, right? And it's the same thing, but they're like, "Oh, yeah, this bad guy from back in the day, he was a socialist." Right? Yeah, Genghis Khan was a socialist, right?
Yeah, all the far right extremism, but the stories were all about how these Palestinian protesters were blocking them from going to the art museum. I can't imagine anybody was too upset for not being able to attend that particular event that night.
Well, don't poo-poo art museums too terribly much. When I was down in Chicago, I actually spent 2 separate days at the Museum of Modern Art because I was having such a good time there, and I'm definitely one of those placard guys. So I spent 2 of my days in Chicago at the Museum of Modern Art. All right.
It's not a tax, it's a levy.
So Alberta, under the UCP, has instituted a $200 vehicle registration tax for electric vehicles. This is presumably to make up for the shortfall in. So, for those of you who aren't aware, part of the fuel tax goes towards road maintenance. Now, given the limited amount of gasoline a Tesla goes through, they don't really pay into that. And so this is a way to say, okay, well, you're still using the roads. So this is how it is. And there was a CBC article talking about this that just completely failed to mention the fact that the fuel tax, part of the fuel tax, is there for that express purpose. They just glossed over that. And then there was a guy against this who said the average kilometer driven in Alberta per year is 15,200. And at the current 9 cents a liter, an F-150 will pay 161 a year in fuel taxes. Does it make sense to charge zero emission smaller vehicles $40 more? First off, in Canada, generally speaking, the bigger the truck is, the more miles it gets put on it. But the point is that even some random guy in support of this picked up on it, and CBC did not. Now, having said that, the UCP said that they weren't going to institute any new taxes without a referendum. And so now they're hiding behind this whole, well, it's not a personal tax, it's a vehicle tax. And I'm really waiting for the people to just be like, do you remember when Rachel Notley said it's not a tax, it's a levy, and hid behind that for years until just the nomenclature ran it over? So yeah, it's funny because the UCP, I don't think, is everything everybody's hoping it's going to be.
You know, one of the things about that article, so I was reading the CBC, and like we have kind of the equivalent thing in the US. We have PBS, we have NPR, but those are like paragons for like doing the exact journalistic thing, following the style guidelines, writing it in this very journalistic style. The CBC article was so poorly written that it took me to like the 4th or 5th paragraph before I even knew what the article was about. Like, do they not have the inverted pyramid where you get that first sentence to really give you all the information? But then like every CBC article that you submitted was this way. And I was like, oh, this is actually like, this isn't just Sean and Twos complaining about the CBC. Like, it literally is bad. And I am by no means a grammar Nazi.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, the grammar works. The odd time they'll screw something up in a headline to make it funny. But the thing about it is that they are quite poorly written. And I remember that when I was in school and there weren't eclipses happening, they'd tell us that if you're writing an article, basically in the first like 3 sentences, someone should have the entire gist of what's being said, and then you explain it more later on. And journalism school these days in Canada is just about how to be loud about what you believe in, as long as it's liberal shit.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, because I'm looking here and they're already getting a quote by the 4th paragraph, you know, from the finance minister, and they haven't even talked about like what exactly is happening here. And it was interesting. I mean, the one interesting thing that they did write in this article was that there are 9,350 electric cars registered in Alberta compared to 5,680. So it's not like this is, you know, $200 is a lot of money for an individual, but this is not a huge sum of money that's going on over this compared to just what's that app you guys? Yeah, what's that app you guys use to get you into Canada?
Can.
Arrive Can.
Right. There's more coming up on that later. Buckle your seatbelts.
Canada needs death care reform.
So it's not really healthcare in Canada at this point. And, you know, everybody says, oh, it's free healthcare. It's free. And it comes out of your damn taxes. And a lot of it comes out of your damn taxes. Like, I'm pretty sure for what we pay here in Canada, like it's something like, I think in Alberta, it's about $9,500 per person per year. So like just think about it this way, Vance. If you took either one of your daughters when they were first born, if you just took them to some health plan thing and said, we're going to give you $750 a month for the entire life of this kid, starting from the day it's born, what kind of coverage could you give us?
Wait, you want me to answer that?
Yeah. Like if you were to just take a newborn baby and say, we're going to pay you $750 a month for this kid's medical insurance, what kind of coverage could you get?
$750 a month? I don't know. It'd probably be okay. I mean, your child would stay alive.
That's not good.
I
Like,
mean,
you
that'd be
wouldn't
good. Yeah. I mean, like,
you wouldn't get a
yes.
good package? Like I assume that they would only operate on you with gold-plated scalpels or something like that.
I don't know, man. 750 probably for a newborn. I don't know. Like, this is one of those things that you just start to pay it and then you forget that you're paying it and you just pay it forever. So you guys get it in your taxes. We just get a bill every month and it just goes.
Okay. All right. Well,
but what the story is about, the thing
Yeah.
that you connected us was that the coroner is investigating after the third patient dies in the waiting care for a hospital in Montreal's South Shore. So a man was waiting over 45 minutes for an ambulance, and then the first two other people had already, I mean, there's 3 people have died in this one waiting room just in a really short amount of time.
Yes. So, I mean, on the bright side, I imagine that the coroner doesn't have to go on Google Maps when he's visiting. But that's like the only saving grace behind this. And it was in fucking Quebec. But aside from that, seriously, when are we going to smarten up with our goddamn healthcare up here? Like, you tune into the Mashup every week, you know that for the past couple months, pretty much every single episode has a story like this, let alone one where there's been 3.
Well, and then there's you linked to that guy that was driving around and sees the huge. Actually, this is for another story coming up. All those the migrants and stuff waiting in line, just enormous lines to get in to see. I don't know who they were trying to see, but it was the lines that you guys are doing in Canada are pretty much insane.
Yeah, they're going to be for bread soon, buddy. All right.
Shirts off for Kaprizov. This is a hockey player.
Yes. So you're not a Blues fan, I'm guessing. All right. So Mika Kaprizov played for the Flames for a great many years. He was there in the 2004 playoff run, and we had what was called, I wasn't here. I was still living in Saskatoon at the time. And it was such a big deal in Saskatoon that I had soccer games that were rescheduled because of playoff games, because everybody was watching it. And in downtown Calgary, it was absolute pandemonium. And they had this thing called Shirts Off for Kaprizov, where women would just flash everybody because that would help the Flames win the Stanley Cup. And anyway, they finally retired his jersey the other day.
I did get to see that clip you linked in Twitter of him like passing it underneath some dude's skate and then going around passing by the goalie.
He was a goalie, but that was just a sick goal that happened on that game where they retired his jersey.
See, this is how out of the loop I am.
All right. Yeah, actually, there was one season where he played 80 of 82 games. He was pretty much, it was him and Jerome McGinley and just a bunch of random pylons for several years. And so they retired his jersey. So his shirt went off one more time.
The North Face gets in your face.
So the North Face, the outdoorsy clothing company.
Yeah, the kind of middle tier. You've got Columbia is kind of the entry level, then you got North Face, and then you've got like Patagonia
and then Patagonia.
Yeah. So North Face, the middle tier outdoor gear, decided that they were going to jump into the diversity and inclusion game in order to sell more outdoor shoes.
Yeah, and if you take this online course about how evil white people are, it'll give you a 20% off coupon for your next purchase. And it's interesting because I think this is going to be the exact opposite of Bud Light, because with Bud Light, you had just regular working class guys who just drank Bud Light. And then to throw Dylan Mulvaney at it, just really upset them. But there's so many people who are just really douchey that get into wearing all kinds of the fancy outdoorsy stuff that I feel like this actually might even be a positive thing in playing to their crowd. I mean, uh, what was that? Let My People Go Surfing. Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. Did you ever read his book?
I know of it. I never read it.
Okay. It's interesting. And then in like the last couple chapters, just out of nowhere, he just starts shitting on Alberta oil sands for like 40 pages. And you're like, where does this even come from? Right.
He
So
does the
anyway,
same thing on GMOs. Yeah.
yeah. Yes. Actually, I remember I was like, I mean, we could go on and on about how GMOs, like, unless you're getting your food from a time machine, everything you eat is a GMO.
Well, so I actually looked this up and went to, I took 10% of this training, and it was like the worst training that you could imagine because, first of all, it's just a bunch of platitudes. Well, actually, the first thing is this is a European ad campaign. It's specifically targeted at people in like England and Scotland. And so it's talking about diversity numbers that are already really low. And then it's saying, like, isn't it weird that when you go hiking, there's no black people or Asian people? Well, maybe it's
Right.
because they don't feel welcome to come on the trails.
Or
And then,
maybe because they're not there.
but now imagine in between each one of these platitudes, you're looking at all these, like, they look like the photographs that they have in their catalog. So it's like, it's not bad enough that I'm sitting here looking through a catalog for stuff I don't really want, but I'm also being lectured. Like, to me, this is like born by a PR firm that's probably feeling great about the instantaneous success that they're having for this limelight, that they're getting this negative attention, but is going to evaporate because no one will do that to get 20% off.
Interesting. All right. You really did your homework this week. I didn't. I just looked at the stuff that was posted. I'm impressed.
Petition against democracy.
Yes. So Calgary, um, the major city that I'm fairly close to, has an absolute shit mayor. The last one they had was absolute shit, but looks like a golden boy in comparison. And so there's this petition going around. Last week we had on the guy Landon Johnston, who's uh, fronting this movement. And so you've got now all of a sudden Jody Gundeck's coming out against it, saying like, "Well, you don't know what they're going to do with your information." Not like, here's the thing: is if there was a petition against you or I, we'd probably be like, "Look, if you think we suck, go sign it. I'll even drive you there." Right? But she's just like, "Oh, no, 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 I don't know if you should sign it." And then there's this absolute bullshit fluff piece in the Calgary Herald that talks about how it's just defeating democracy to do a petition, which is literally a democratic process. And I would say that it's a lot more democratic than going out and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna be normal, middle of the road, nothing special." And then the day I get in, when the ink isn't even dry on all the ballots yet, I'd be like, "Yep, $87 billion climate emergency. Surprise, everybody!" Right? I would say that that's a lot less democratic, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I heard her doing a press conference on an unrelated topic. It was about how much money the province is giving them due to their budget cuts, and it was interesting because it sounded a little like Kamala Harris was up in Calgary giving this like introduction
That's a
to it. It was,
really good comparison, actually. Not as bubbly, but yes.
yes, but I mean, what she gives up in bubbliness, she makes up for in bottle glasses and kind of looking confused.
Yeah. All right. Oh no. I didn't do a headline for this one. But this is the one that I specifically told you to not read, so I hope you didn't read it.
I did not read it. This is the one I
There
didn't read.
was an avalanche warning in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Okay. And here's what it looked like: major storm travel avalanche risks. How much do you know about Yorkton, Vance?
I don't know that much, but I have a somewhat good idea of geography in Saskatchewan, so I'm wondering
Okay.
where this is going.
All right. So Saskatchewan, fairly well known for being not topographically diverse. In fact, I heard this thing. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently the first time they sent people out to topographically map Saskatchewan and Manitoba, they came back with just basically nothing on the map because you need to reach a certain elevation change before you put that next circle. And so they sent them out to do it again because they figured they screwed up. So that's Yorkton. This here, we've got this place had an avalanche warning. Okay, and I'm just throwing up a few different pictures, and then here's the topographical changes. The biggest change you can find from one end to the other is 100 feet, which is actually a lot higher than I thought it was going to be. And this place had an avalanche warning, so hopefully everybody's okay.
Yeah, what I'd always heard about Saskatchewan is it's so flat you can watch your dog run away for a week.
Yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie. Easy to draw, hard to spell. Okay, all right. Where am I here now? Oh shoot. No wonder Sean always screws this up.
Melee defunds Argentina's CBC. Or Miley, how do you pronounce that?
Millet?
Millet, the Argentinian president, the libertarian that carries around the chainsaw.
Yeah, and has this like Luke Skywalker haircut. It just looks like he's absolutely fucking insane, which makes me kind of second guess myself because I agree with pretty much everything he's done. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy too. But yeah, so they've got this Argentinian CBC basically called Telam, and he's shutting the doors on it. He's saying, "Don't, you guys are done. This state paid propaganda is as of no more." And so, laid off a whole bunch of people, shuttering it. I don't know if they're going to turn it into Starbucks or what the deal is, but if it can be done there, it can be done here.
Yeah, I worked in public radio for a while, and for a while there, this mantra is, we don't actually get that much money from the government. We're mostly listener supported. Like in the US, people, they have like, do you guys, does CBC in these places have pledge drives like we do down in the States?
No, what they do is CBC is the large recipient of government funds for media, but there's also other bailouts amounting to just sick amounts of money. And so this is basically done with backroom deals where they go in and they'll say, like, CBC will be a little bit more public about it. Like they're like, oh, we're going to lay off a whole bunch of people because we don't have enough money. Wouldn't it be shouldn't we get more money? Anybody think we should get more money? And they'll do articles about how strapped they are for cash rather than actually, cover the news. And so they'll do that, but there's no ring those phones thing. There's no telemiracle for CBC. And then like the other ones are just backroom deals where I assume it's just in the VIP room of a strip club where they're getting lap dances from some girl named Mercedes, and then they'll be like, yeah, so minister, we could do a lot more lap dances if we had a little bit more money. And then he'll do a bailout.
Well, in the US, like I don't see how you can justify at all the government spending money on media. The one thing that you could justify would be like public access television or public access radio. But the only reason that they need public access is because the government owns all those channels anyway, and they decide who to give it out to. So they give you one little channel right at the end of the bandwidth that occasionally you can get on for 30 minutes and use mass media. But like outside of this, I don't understand why would the media ever get money from the government?
So the basic idea behind the CBC on paper is that we are very niche, we're a tenth the population of the states, even though we are larger. And because of that, our culture is dictated for a large part of it by what you guys are doing. You guys are a few years behind us in terms of craziness of head of state, but in terms of popular culture and whatnot, basically we just get a whole lot of American stuff. And so they said, well, you know what, we need to do this to protect our culture. And so the idea behind the CBC is to foment Canadian culture. Now, no one ever asked, is maybe there a better way to do that? They say, oh, well, if you don't like CBC, you don't like Canadian culture. Like, well, okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue with you. Done. Right? But that's the on paper mantra.
CDC wearing tinfoil mask.
Yeah, this is crazy breaking news, Vance. So this is from the States. The Center for Disease Control now advises people to treat COVID the same as for flu and other respiratory illnesses. This is absolutely shocking. I can't believe that they're just gonna just treat it like it's just a flu.
So when we started preschool with our daughters this year,
Mhm.
they came out with an announcement on day one. Hey, we're going to follow CDC guidelines that we're going to, if you are exposed, you have to be away for 5 days or whatever. And I'm fairly sure, because this is a private like little preschool, that
Mhm.
the free market did its thing, and by the afternoon, that had been rescinded, and they started a new policy, which was the one that the CDC is implementing right now, which is as long as your kid can stand up and walk and like breathe somewhat normally, they are allowed to come to school.
Yeah, isn't it funny how the market can sometimes and quite often really make some good decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how this is like taking so long for them to catch up. But like after that whole mask debacle, which you and Sean covered pretty thoroughly a couple months ago,
Mhm.
where they were like, yeah, 6 feet, kind of the masks kind of work. We don't know where
Mhm.
we got this exactly.
Mhm.
Like now they're just getting rid of all of it. And yet no one will pay a price for this. Like there's
No.
nobody that's going to stand up and be like, all right, I'm going to go and stand in front of Congress and take the responsibility for this. I'm going to go to jail for a few years, or, our department is going to give back all this money, or there's no one that will ever pay a price for this.
Well, because they didn't get enough push at the start. Like if you had Fauci up there and he got pressed and said, "Where'd you get this number from?" And he'd be like, it's you have to. You have to. It's the law now." And then someone specifically says, "Okay, well, you know what? Here, sign this document that says that if it's full of shit, you're going to go to jail." Right? And that's none of them had to put their money where their mouth was at any point leading up to it, and so there's not really an avenue for recourse.
Yeah, and there never will be. And I mean, I think this is why people that are writing stuff about it, there's a guy named Matt Ridley and Alina Chan, all the stuff that Sean's doing, like people should be saying their names of the people that were making these decisions over and over and over again, so that history doesn't let it be memory hold. Because like if you don't remember it, it will happen again.
Oh yes. Yes, absolutely. And disease X is coming right around the corner. And the worst part is, Vance, is that if disease X ends up being some debilitating, horrible thing that just kills a whole bunch of people, I know right off the bat, I'm gonna be like, I don't give a shit. You guys fucked me around last time. I'm not listening. And then all of a sudden it just wipes out humanity because they cried wolf.
Once you've had black, you never go back.
Yes. So Canada does a lot of grants for funding research and whatever else. And the undergraduate student research awards this year are only going to be granted to Black people. So I wonder what the First Nations people, what the Asian people, what the Haitian people, although I guess they're Black, but like, what does everybody else think of this? And whose turn is it? Like, is it Mexicans next year?
Well, I mean, the good news is that I went and looked this up and kind of read some of the fine print. And to be eligible to apply for these awards, you must self-identify as black. So you get to
Oh,
choose
so
whether
they're
you
going to
are
give
or
them
not.
all the Trudeau.
Yeah, but here's the catch, and they actually say this in the article. Within the application form, you choose, but we want to note that this self-identification information will be shared with the institution who you are applying to, and if awarded, it's going to be made public. So they're saying if you self-identify as black, you better be able to
You better
put this
own it.
forward to the rest of the public. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, then that asks the question, like, there have been a lot. I think some of the stuff where men have been dressing up as women, some of it's legitimate that these are people that have they really think they are that way. And I think there's some people that are trolling, or they're doing it to get out of a crime, or they're doing it to, and you have to
Oh
wonder
yeah.
who will start pushing it on things like race. If you
Well,
can
it's
say,
already happening because in Canada you get lighter sentences and different sentencing options for being First Nations, for example. And so there's some people, we covered it, I don't know, maybe about 30, 40 episodes ago, where there was a guy who just decided that he was First Nations and he self-identified as First Nations so that he could kind of have the easy street punishment, so to speak, or the relatively easier punishment. So yeah, it's already happening. It's already happening. Elizabeth Warren led the charge, and the culture just creeps up from the States.
I'm not reading it.
So the headline is Canada sucks.
And this was to the article of, let's see here, immigration is not all that it's cracked up to be. So this is where they started translating some of the Indian reports about what's it like to be in India that were being played in India. And these Indian stories were saying it's horrible here. You can't make a living. It's like all these people are living in desperate poverty and debt. So this has caused quite a stir.
Yeah, so oh shoot, it locked me out. I got to sign in. But the gist of the one article was just that exactly what you said. People move here because they think they're going to have a great life and everything's going to be wonderful, and then they get here and they're like, I'm working 90 freaking hours just to pay the bills every week. And yeah, fewer immigrants are applying for citizenship despite record immigration, new data shows. Now, if there's record immigration and fewer people are applying, where are those other people? How are they getting in?
Late last year, Bloomberg News interviewed a Ukrainian refugee who fled Russia shelling and missile attacks, only to find a Canada that was practically unlivable. Quote, I'm tired all the time, said Olslensky Menetesko, 44 years old. That's pretty rough, man. Are you feeling that? Do you think that's hyperbole, or you think that's how people are really feeling?
Well, I know that there's a lot of people. One of the issues with immigrating to Canada is that there's trouble recognizing your education. Now, granted, there's places where you can just buy a degree, so it's not as though it's entirely bad. But yeah, they'll move here with like a doctorate and then work a cash register kind of thing. Sometimes, actually, quite a lot of the time. And so they're like, oh, well, this is great. I can just go and be a doctor, or oh, I can do some advanced engineering thing. And then they get here, and no, you're working at a gas station. So that kind of thing is fairly frequent. It happens fairly frequently.
Man, that buzzer's hard to work. We were all right.
Yes. The buzzer, by the way, when we first started, I bought a couple of them off Amazon. Did you ever see the ones where we had that hand buzzer and then we would like tap it and we're trying to get the mic to pick it up, and it was a similar sound but much quieter. And so yeah, the buzzer has improved quite a lot. So yeah, but we were all right. This is a very new development again in COVID, and learning about things after they happened. But COVID-19 may have been created by scientists in Wuhan lab.
Yeah, it was
Really?
a little bit. It was a little bit hard to even know why you threw this in there. Other than, is this like a new guy that's saying this? He's talking about how there's finally a smoking gun, and I would say there's quite a few smoking guns around this topic. If you're watching Matt Ridley or Alina Chan,
or for example, if you just apply Occam's razor and you say, what do you think's more likely, that that some guy who lives right next to the Wuhan Institute of Virology went to a wet market, bought a bat, went home, made soup with it, got sick, put it in the garbage can, but didn't take the garbage out, and then that virus spread to the point where their CDC took notice of it. They tracked down patient 0, managed to find his house and find that bat in the garbage before he had taken it out, and then managed to confirm that that's exactly where it came from. Right? Or maybe somebody just tipped over a petri dish.
Yeah, if even Jon Stewart is calling, the regular media on this,
yes,
then that it's so obvious that he wasn't going to stake his credibility on it.
Yeah, which to his credit, that was pretty well done.
The truth shall set spies free.
So now we're getting into more things have come up from these two Chinese spies who were working in Winnipeg, and then when they got kicked out of Canada, immediately went to the Wuhan Institute of Virology a few months before COVID happened.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So the story reads that in 2019, in Winnipeg, which you guys have the only stage 4 or only level 4 virology in the country, and they said, "Hey, these two people, they got to go." I think it was a married couple, right? And they were
Yeah.
from China, and they said, "You got to go." And then you guys had MPs, MPAs, whatever you call them, the
MPs, members of
MPs
Parliament,
that were protecting the reasoning for why they were arrested, or they weren't arrested. They were never arrested, but why were they told that they couldn't be there and sending them away? And you have all these Canadian officials that are like, no, we need to keep these records under wraps. And it seems like some of these records are coming out, right?
So they said it was for national security reasons, and the Liberal Party actually sued the Speaker of the House, who was a liberal. He's the guy who fell under the bus over that whole Nazi standing ovation guy. And so they basically got the courts involved with keeping these documents secret, and then had an election in the middle there, presumably because they thought they would win, but also it delayed the release of these documents. And so you had Mark Holland, who's a liberal. He's the Canada's federal minister of health. He was on an interview talking about how, it's really important, and we're trying to get these out, and we're trying to make sure that everybody was protected and everything like that, and trying to get things out as soon as possible. And then so he goes on this big monologue on CTV, and then Vasi Kapelos, to her credit, she's like, "Yeah, but you missed a step there. You forgot about the time that you literally went to court to prevent the documents from being released." So, yeah, I thought that was well done on her part.
It was pretty fun to watch.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Like,
DEI is DIE. You missed that one, so I've no, DEI is dead. I was going to say that's the Gad Sad joke that he makes all the time.
Oh yeah, he calls it DIE, yes, which is a way better idea, I think.
So this is the story about my my native US, where the University of Florida started to say, actually, we are canceling all DEI programs in the University of Florida because the governor has said this is what you have to do. So the head of the DEI program, all of the contracts they had with different vendors, all canceled. And you have to imagine that is money going straight to their bottom line at the end of the day. And there are probably a lot of administrators that were pretty happy about this.
Unless they were in the DEI department. So, yeah, the wheels are kind of starting to turn on this, where people are starting to realize that it's just a big grift. It's just a grift. And it doesn't stand up to debate. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And now you're actually seeing institutions moving away from it, which is a good thing. And Florida, by the way, is the flattest state in the United States. I looked that up because I was gonna see what I could compare to Yorkton, but I've never been to Florida. But I was like, I feel like it shouldn't be.
It's real flat. I mean, it's real flat.
I'm picturing someplace like Kansas or Nebraska, but yeah, apparently Florida is the flattest state.
Flat and pretty low elevation, all in general. I think I would disagree with you that DEI is actually dead. I think that it's just splitting a lot more among partisan lines. So I think you're going to find some places that say you're not welcome here, and then other places that rapidly increase it. I think there's no indication to me that this is dead. This is one state where the governor happens to know how to pull that lever, but I don't think this is winding down.
Well, I don't think it's dead per se. That was more for the sake of the headline, but I think it's definitely getting into, when an animal's dying and it just starts lashing out everywhere, like it's caught in a trap, and it just starts lashing out at everything. And if you try and go save it, it'll just maul you to death. I think that's kind of where it's getting to.
Alberta's UCP budget is a drunken door dash.
Vance, they're spending money like goddamn crazy.
Yeah, so
So
this is the story where Danielle Smith comes in. She has a huge budget surplus available to her, but instead of keeping expenses the same, they've increased them rather dramatically. So tens of billions of dollars, right?
yeah, so their projected budget surplus in 2023 was supposed to be 2 billion. And then, there's more income tax. There's even more resource revenues, but lower oil and gas companies, higher other revenues. Like you look at this, the difference in unexpectedly high revenues is a little over $3 billion. They had a little over $3 billion in unexpected revenues. And even after all that, they've got a $367 million surplus. And it's tricky accounting because even within that, they're somehow still borrowing $2.5 billion this year. And they've got it like it's weird. It's just a shell game. And this is supposed to be the conservative party. These are supposed to be the fiscally conservative people. Rachel Notley spent money like crazy. And her last federal budget in 2019, this budget is 25% more money. In 5 years, the budget has gone up 25% under a conservative government. I get that there's lots of people who have their team, but if this is your team, Shane, if you're watching this, tighten it up, buddy. Tighten it up. Love you, though.
Good riddance to bad policy.
Yes. So this is from Rate Hub, which is, I think this is the first time we've ever covered an article in Rate Hub. But the Liberals had this just cockamamie idea that they could help home buyers by splitting ownership. So the federal government would own, I think it was up to 10% of a home, and they would help you out with the down payment, and then they would also take 10% of whatever it gained before you actually bought them out. So they would just become, you'll own nothing and be happy. And even if you wanted to buy something, you could get them to buy 10% of it. And I couldn't find any data on how many people use this, but basically what happened was they rolled out this policy that so few people, maybe it was zero, thought this was a good idea that they're just like, okay, well, screw it. Obviously, no one's interested in this, so we're not going to do it anymore. And it's just too bad they don't do that with a lot of other things.
Yeah, their plan was to try and get it to 100,000 families and spend $1.25 billion over 3 years. But after the first year and a half of it being out there, fewer than 400 homes had actually used it. So they went ahead and said, we give up. We don't know how to.
400 homes in a country of 40 million people.
Turkey that terrorized Quebec town is taken down by slingshot wielding resident. This was a fantastic article. This could have been in the Happy News.
Well, maybe not for the turkey. So what happened is in some shithole Quebec town like Quebec City or Montreal, there's these wild turkeys running around, attacking everybody, attacking kids, attacking old people. Everything that COVID never did. And somebody killed it with a slingshot. So somebody called up their buddy and said, come shoot this thing. Because they reached out to some government agency, and the government agency just left them on unread. And so they took matters into their own hands. And now some animal advocates are complaining about the potential for maiming the animal rather than killing it.
I thought what was so funny about this article was one, he did it with a slingshot, which just that's
Yes.
hilarious, Canada. But two, they actually quote that they had law enforcement standing next to them to make sure that it was okay. So the people that are allowed to use guns weren't going to use it. They were going to do David Goliath style, like try
Yeah.
and take that thing out.
Well, actually, funny story. I know when I was a kid, I was hanging out over at a buddy's place, and the cops dropped by and they asked my buddy's dad to come over to the other side of town and shoot a fawn that would just got chased into town by some coyotes, and he was hanging out in somebody's backyard, and he had gangrene on his leg. And they're just like, "Hey, can you just come over and shoot this for us? Because there's a lot of paperwork if we shoot it." And so, yeah, anyways, it happens. It happens.
CBC budget higher than BC homeless.
Yeah. So, we also had issues with homeless people getting high as fuck in Canada lately. But also, CBC's budget of $1.3 billion last year has been increased to 1.4 billion.
Yeah, and this is after they've already announced the 10% layoffs. Do you think they're still going to do the 10% layoffs? Is this something they wanted to do that they were disguising as a budget crunch, or what do you think's up there?
They've already done I think 50 of them so far of the layoffs. I think I remember seeing that in the article. So there's already some people that have been shit canned. They're probably going to do a bit of a hiring freeze, and they're probably, I'm guessing, it depends, like, because there's also the issue with the executive bonuses, right? So we haven't gotten a firm answer on what they're doing with that, which tells me that they're probably going to get them. But I feel like if they're the tiniest bit smart, which they obviously fucking aren't, as you can tell by the articles, but if they're the tiniest bit smart, they'd maybe give themselves like very small bonuses.
Well, I
Like
don't know. I mean,
here's enough for, a vacation, but that's it.
you got to be pretty smart to be able to pull off an increase in your budget while still cutting jobs and not even using the inverted pyramid in your journalism.
That is a very fair point, Vance. That's a very fair point. Am I dumb for not working with them, and are they really smart? Because obviously they're getting they're getting $1.4 billion a year. So maybe I'm the idiot.
Year-end bud sales come up light.
So yeah, the numbers finally came out over Bud Light and the Anheuser-Busch drop in sales.
Yeah, so the story now is that after Dylan Mulvaney, the trans woman that said that he was that had his face put on one of the Bud Light cans, that this just decimated Bud Light, and it did. Like, if you talk to anybody that delivered beer, that served beer, like they couldn't give away the cans.
Nope.
But
I was at a liquor store yesterday, just the local liquor store, and they used to have a pallet. They'd in the cold beer section, they had a pallet for Bud Light, and now they've just got a few cases, and they don't even have their own pallet anymore.
Well, so I don't know if you guys are seeing this in the US, but so there's a comedian named Shane Gillis who's a part of
Yep.
kind of the Joe Rogan, and he
He's an
has a little
ambassador
bit
for them now.
Yeah, now he's saying like, "Oh, I'm a sellout," and he was drinking it on Joe Rogan the other day. So I think it is costing Bud Light a ton of money, and it's probably making some more conservative comedians pretty wealthy right now.
And
But
the UFC.
do you think they're going to make it back? You think their brand will be revived and they'll be okay?
If they knock it out of the park with one of these things that they're trying to do, and they don't step on any landmines in the meantime, they'll probably get somewhere close to it. Because, I mean, there's lots. I don't know why, because it's shit beer. It's not even made with barley; it's made with rice. But there are some people who seem to like the taste of it.
Well, I'm a St. Louis person, so the $1 billion to the bottom line of Bud Light is not great for St. Louis, but it is what it is.
Why St. Louis?
Well, because that's where Anheuser-Busch is, or
Oh,
AB of InBev now. Yeah.
I assume they'd have been in Milwaukee,
No, that's Miller. Miller is in Milwaukee, where I went to
but
college.
aren't there? Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that you went to college in Milwaukee. I thought that Milwaukee was like the I don't know, the ca- the big
Milwaukee is
hub.
Millertown. There's a bunch of beers there. St.
Yeah.
Louis and Milwaukee were both settled by German immigrants.
Mhm.
Missouri was much more similar to the Rhineland, and so you have these like all the Anheuser-Busch beers are within that kind of lager world, and they also had
Mhm.
caves here. But up in Milwaukee, it was Germans, but they settled and did different kinds of beer up there. So
They didn't subscribe to Reinheitsgebot.
PPC candidate played both sides.
What did you think? How much sense were you able to make of this, Vance?
None at all. Yeah, this was like I'm pulling it up right now. Yeah, this is the app thing, the
The Arrive
Canada
Can app.
Arrive Can app. And what I'm understanding from what little I saw of the story is the two largest companies that took what was supposed to be an $80,000 like build out of an app to being tens of billions of dollars, and the top two companies combined I think have something like 8 employees, and they're charging like $20 million or something like that. I mean, it's just totally out of
Well,
control.
they don't know how much it came up to, but the auditor estimated it was going to be around 60 million. And so this guy, he came out with like 7.9 million or something like that. Chris Van Dam says Lance realizing maybe U.S. politics isn't all that bad.
Yeah.
It is. It is. We'll get to that in a little bit. So, this Dalian Enterprises president and founder David Yeo, whatever else, he works for Canada's D&D, and there's videos of him speaking out against this stuff and speaking out against the lockdowns and everything else like that. And so he was working for the Canadian government, and while he was working for the Canadian government, he started this business on the side that got, what was it, $7.9 million in Arrive Can money. And while all that was happening, he ran for the PPC. They're the freedom anti-lockdowns, and I feel like they spent a lot more time trying to be sensational about it than being authentic. But they were head and shoulders the first political party to say this is bullshit. It needs to end. And the whole time they've got this absolute snake oil salesman running for them in the last federal election. Like, this guy is slicker than wet chicken shit.
I think you and Sean are probably just both bitter about this because you guys have been trying to get that sweet government media money, and you just saw a guy that went ahead and pulled it off, and he didn't have to sign that he was black. He just did it right out there in the open.
That's fair.
Liberals pass online harms to their re-election chances bill.
Yes. So, it's.
This
Sorry,
is
I
a
guess
crazy article. This is the article about.
didn't pass it yet. But
Yeah, so this is where they're trying to make it so if you insult someone at some horrible level, or if you call for a genocide, or somebody thinks that you've called for a genocide, or some of the things that you've said might imply or be misinterpreted as genocide, you can go to jail for the rest of your life.
yes. Yes. And if someone thinks that you have the potential to do all this, you can be fined up to $70,000. So, hey, that Twos guy, he says some funky stuff. I think he might actually call for the extermination of Mexicans. All right. And then they bring me forth in front of a tribunal. And I say,
A
but I've
pre-crimes
never.
tribunal. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. This is total Minority Report shit. American culture trickling up to us. And so, yeah, there's so many people. I saw this thing where Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, was saying, like, he's doing some kind of like a podcast thing, and he's looking at this stuff coming out of Canada, and he's like, I'm going to call bullshit on this. I don't think this is true. This has to be fake. There's no way anybody's that fucking crazy. Well, guess what, folks? Somebody is that crazy, and his name is Justin Trudeau. And apparently I'm going to go to jail because I said that.
I mean, do you think that some of this is strategic game playing? Like, if you're sitting there having to fight off, like, hey, we don't want this bill that says if my neighbor thinks I might be talking about a genocide, I can go to jail forever. That then like gets them to go, it gives them the ability to run around and do whatever they want in other domains. Because nobody
Like a
could write
smoke
this and
screen?
actually, yeah, like nobody could think that like people would support. Maybe people would support it. I don't know. I guess
Well,
I've been
some people
surprised, by the
do.
way.
There was
Yeah.
somebody at CTV, or sorry, at Facebook, one of the people who goes around banning people at Facebook was talking about how wonderful this is, and it's a step forward for democracy. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which is a bullshit organization started to prop up liberal policies, is saying it's wonderful. So all these people whose ideas can't sustain sunlight, they're saying this is wonderful. And they're the people driving the bus in Ottawa right now. So it's kind of hard to say. I guess time will tell, but I don't see it as being a popular thing. It's just if you can't beat someone, you need to shut them up, right?
Sharks in the women's pool.
So this could have easily been the happy news. So
There's two women,
yeah.
one woman and one man that is claiming to be a woman playing in the game of billiards. I think this is in Ireland, right? Yeah.
I think European Pool Championships, and it's
So
Kim O'Brien. So
they
presumably, yeah.
they lean down to do that special opening where you like hit the cue to see how
To
far
see
you can get
who
it away
breaks
from the
first.
second
Yeah.
rail. Yeah. And the Irish woman doesn't, she lines up as though she's going to do it and then doesn't, and she just
Mhm.
shakes hands with the other person and forfeits. And you hear
Yep.
the crowd, which wasn't huge, but what was there, go crazy. They were really happy because they were
Yes.
saying this is the way that you stop this, is that you don't compete against men that are playing as women in these competitions. And so she's being celebrated around the world for that.
Yes. And Riley Gaines, the female swimmer that lost to that dude Thompson or whatever.
Yeah, Leah Thompson.
Yes.
I don't know the other name. Yeah.
Says that I'm happily paying her prize money she lost out on. Stop playing their game. More of this. So yeah, she didn't win because she forfeited, and Riley Gaines is paying her out what she would have won had she won, which I think is very well done for Riley as well. So this is just, it's firing on all cylinders. This is that DEI stuff. Dying a slow death.
It is definitely like a kickback, and this is that what was in an Ender's Game when they said the only way to win is to not play at all. No, that's
Oh, I know what you think.
it's with the Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody in the comments will know that movie, but
But
it
yeah,
was,
it's a lot like Ender's Game, where he finds out at the end that he's actually been, moving the pieces around the whole time. Right?
but my claim here was that like you can't win in this game, so the only way to win is just to not play at all. I think
Yeah.
that she made a great move there. It was bold, and it's really got to burn. You spent your whole life working to be able to get to be, playing the championship
Yeah.
games. Like,
And then somebody who sucks at competing against comparable people goes in and just swoops it.
X gonna give it to you.
All right. Now, this is something I feel like you should probably appreciate, Vance. So, Elon Musk says in the coming weeks, Grok, which is the Twitter AI, Grok will summarize these mammoth laws before they are passed by Congress, so you know what their real purpose is. So, those 1,600-page omnibus bills that you folks down south are such big fans of, that get voted on without even being read, people are just going to start being able to just plug them into Grok, and it'll spit out what it does.
I think that's good. I mean, like the ability to be able to distill those things down using AI is definitely a good thing. But um and as much, I mean, I pay for X now because I want to support what Elon is doing, and I think his AI is probably a lot better than Google's Gemini, which when they, when you go to ask Gemini, paint us the founding fathers, they come out as all minorities as opposed to the British white men that they were. Um
Well,
the
yeah.
so like I think that is good, but also not good in the fact that like until you know what that code says for AI, you don't
How do you
actually
trust it?
understand if it you can't. And like that's the lesson from Gemini should be on all of these things, is that like unless you can actually read the code for yourself, you have to be very, very suspicious of what they put in there because the AI can be programmed to say anything at all.
Perfect example. So this is what Gemini had to say about 222 minutes. Uh, their political views lean center left and align with the NDP's platform. Vocal critic of the current United Conservative Party, which is fair. I am pretty critical of them. The reason why my podcast is named is because the podcast is usually around 222 minutes long. Which could you imagine just doing? Okay, all right then. In January 24th, or in January 2024, 222 minutes announced their candidacy for leader of the Alberta NDP. Their campaign platform focuses on issues such as public health care, climate change, and economic inequality. They have received mixed reactions to their candidacy, with some praising their fresh perspective and others questioning their lack of political experience. That's what Gemini had to say about me.
See,
So,
isn't that like wild? Like it used to be that if a government wanted to produce propaganda, they were limited by how many people can we hire, how much money can we throw at this. But
nope.
now they're only going to be limited by how much electricity can you generate because they're going to have the computers that can pump
Well, I
that
guess
out.
it's a good thing that the lefties all want to go with solar.
Rebate and switch.
Oh, I just realized I switched tabs and now I don't know where I ended up here. Oh, yes. The Wilkinson says no carbon rebates for Saskatchewan after province says it won't remit. So this is so Scott Moe is the premier of Saskatchewan, and he said because their power company is a crown corporation, he said that we're not going to collect carbon tax on home heating in Saskatchewan because you're giving Atlantic Canada a rebate on it, but you're not giving everybody else. And we have the power to do this because we actually own the company that does it, and we're just not going to collect GST. And so now the Liberals, the second blow, so that was the first shot. And then their reply volley is that, okay, well, you know what? If you're not going to collect that, then no one in Saskatchewan is going to get their carbon tax rebate. So it's getting pretty dirty pretty quickly, and I'm interested to see where this goes and who blinks first.
Willy Wonka gets wonky. So this was something because of the CBC writing, couldn't make heads or tails of it. Somehow somebody created an AI Willy Wonka experience, and it
Mhm.
was a terrible, terrible mistake.
In Glasgow. Yes. And apparently the whole thing was unintelligible and not just because of the accent. And so they had this they propped it up as being this huge awesome thing, and then people went inside and it was just this garbled unintelligible mess. And apparently the lead actor who was playing Willy Wonka said that he had like this 15-page impossible to read ChatGPT script, and there was this evil character that didn't appear in the books, and nothing about this was good or well put together or well executed. And so somebody, I guess, just tried this out in a warehouse, and now it's this big international deal because of how much it sucked.
Yeah, and they had like initially people had kind of made fun of the actors for doing it, and then somebody posted a bunch of photos of the actors trying to make like the best out of a bad
Mhm.
situation because the kids are like horrified and there's all these weird images around there. So in some ways it was an endearing story, but I mean that this is the consequence of AI.
Yes.
Transgender man kills himself. And
Yeah. So
ultimately it gets blamed on your premiere, right?
yes. So dark note here, but so a few weeks ago, Danielle Smith said that they were basically just going to take, I would say, a fairly middle of the road stance as far as the trans stuff goes with kids. So the the new things just pertain to children. Basically, if your kid wants to decide that they've changed their genders, the parents have to be informed. Men aren't allowed to compete in women's sports, couple other normal things, but within school structure. And a 37-year-old man decided to kill himself because of that.
Is what
Supposedly.
they're saying. Yeah, like I was reading this article and I'm like trying to decipher what's going on, and then you're like, and then the police came to my house and told me that my 37-year-old nephew had committed suicide. And like at first you're like, okay, nobody wants that suicide by anybody.
Mhm.
That means they were in a bad spot or in Canadian healthcare. And
Yes.
then then you're like, wait a second, what does this have to do with that? And like then you go to read the article further and you're like, man, they are like pulling as far as they possibly can to try and
Oh,
drag
yeah.
this into being a story about how Danielle Smith caused this person's suicide. But seems like the right answer is that person had a lot going on in their life that was difficult to handle, and to tie theirs to some political cause like this is bad.
It is very bad, and the other really bad thing about it is that the left has been pushing this as being like, "Oh, people are gonna kill themselves. People are gonna kill themselves because of this. People are gonna kill themselves because of this." They're kind of they've kind of really been low key encouraging something like this.
Yeah, there was that thing that you posted in there about the woman saying, "Look, the biggest impact of suicide is that other people get it in their minds that maybe that's what they ought to do, that this idea can be seeded, and in particular among young people. So if you keep telling young people, hey,
Mhm.
if your trans identity is not accepted, you're really in danger of killing yourself, really in danger of killing yourself, really in danger of killing yourself."
Yeah.
And then they act surprised and say that the reason that these people are harming themselves is because of what they're saying it is, as opposed to this idea was
Them
seeded to
trying to
them.
clockwork orange them into it. So, yeah, it's absolutely goddamn despicable, and let's be clear, if you're 37 years old, you're not in school anymore, and this stuff hasn't even passed yet. They've just laid out the framework for it. So,
The real tragedy is that the man's family that has some kind of political desire or their views or whatever, that they would use this as anything other than a time of mourning and trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces.
yeah.
US president fit for duty.
Yes. Joe Biden declared fit for duty after annual health exam, but doesn't take cognitive test.
Yeah, I mean, like, where do you even go with this story? Because everybody can
Where do you
see.
wanna go with this? Did you
Well,
see the booty juice one?
I did. I mean, so he's trying to say Buttigieg, and like you wait for it. You wait for him to get like somebody posts one of the president anymore. You're like, all right, let's check this one out. What's
Yeah.
it going to be like? And it takes him like 5 minutes to walk out on stage, and then when he finally does, instead of saying thank you to Buttigieg, he says thank you to Booty Juice. And
Yeah.
it's like everybody in the crowd, like you can even hear the clapping kind of go down, like it's so awkward.
So, booty juice. So,
But clearly,
apparently
after
Sir
his
Mix-a-Lot
physical,
Sir Mix-a-Lot's a governor in the States now?
the doctors said they issued an 8-page report on his health about how great it was, and that they thought his health was so good that he didn't need to do a mental acuity test, which I think.
Despite the fact that one of your courts just a couple weeks ago declared that he was mentally unfit to be convicted of doing that, unsecure storage of top secret files.
I mean, it's one of those things that like is actually a little bit painful because you're like, I didn't think I was actually living in a banana republic. And then you're like, no, actually you are. Like there's a bureaucratic state that's running things, and that, who the president is, they don't even care. It's just a figurehead.
Oh, buddy, welcome, welcome to our world. You're about 7 or pardon me, about 5 years behind us in this, right? About 4 or 5 years behind us, but this has been the whole thing where you're like, huh, this whole thing is shit, and the people running it are garbage. But hey, I mean, I just wish we had our own booty juice. That's one thing I'm jealous of you guys about.
Time for progressives to shut their equipment access covers.
Yes. Minister of Housing in BC says they're amending order that the power engineers, boilers, pressure vessel, and refrigeration safety regulation is amended in Section 2.1, the definition of professional engineer by striking out Engineers and Geoscientists Act and substituting Professional Governance Act. And here's the kicker: in Section 64E, which is like my favorite page of that document, striking out manhole and handhole covers and substituting equipment access covers.
Hope they don't shit on you, Bubbles. Shit hogs. Big,
You
dirty
can't see their
shit.
manholes anymore, man. Despite the fact that I don't know if it's the same in the States, but when have you ever seen in Canada, it's all men that work in the industries that go down into manholes. So it actually is correct.
Well, in the US, I've definitely seen women going down in those holes, but they're typically pretty okay with them being called manholes because these are generally some pretty tough old gals
Yeah.
that are not worried about whether or not they're called woman holes, like which sounds like something
That's
else
pretty fair.
together.
I mean, if nothing else, why don't we just call them Ninja Turtle holes?
To spike and protect.
Yeah, here's another fucking dark one.
Yeah, the Royal Canadian Police were chasing somebody, the RCMP, right? Yes, and they were chasing somebody. They decide, hey, we're going to use one of the. I think they've only done a few hundred times where they put out spike strips for a guy that was in a U-Haul. Well, they do it. They end up disabling the woman's car that was driving with her children.
Random person.
She gets out of the car, and the guy they were trying to do was driving a U-Haul cube truck, and he runs her down and kills her. And so they're trying to capture him using the strip strike, ended up getting him killed. And then the guy still got away. He got out of the cube truck into a Toyota Corolla that he stole and got away.
That had a kid in it. Yep.
Oh yeah, that even had a kid in it. Can you imagine the day that guy's having?
Yeah, I mean it's a big deal. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him away for at least like 4 or 5 months, man. But seriously, like the RCMP threw out the spike belt, captured some random, like just some random motorist just driving around. And then she's like, what the hell happened to my car? Gets out, boom, game over. She wouldn't have been in that situation at all if it weren't for the cops. And it's really interesting how apologetic this Global News article was towards, like, it really kind of brushed over the fact that the RCMP put her in a spot where she died.
Yeah, and I mean, you see these photos of her. I mean, she's like, I don't know, was she a teacher or something? I mean, she seemed like a really nice lady, and she just got caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Champion throws tree and insurance claim.
Yeah, so we're going out to another one in the UK here for this. So this one definitely was Ireland.
Yeah, this is the one where the woman had put forward like some $800,000 insurance claim about why she couldn't work, and she needed to get back pay, and she wasn't going to be able to because she had hurt her back so badly in, I think it was a car accident or something.
Yeah, and then And then she entered a tree throwing contest, which I guess in Ireland they throw Christmas trees, and in Scotland they toss cabers, but whatever. Uh, so she enters this Irish Christmas tree throwing contest, wins the fucking thing, gets her picture in the paper winning the thing, and then the guy at the insurance company is just flipping through like, "Oh yes, I guess it's a lovely day. I'm just gonna read the paper." And opens it up and it's like, holy shit, that's the woman who wants to take $800,000 from us. Well, so then they just put it in front of the judge. They're like, here's the article, Your Honor. And he threw that case out further than the tree.
Can you even imagine? I mean, like, just the horrible embarrassment that you would have. And I'm sure she's got all kinds of excuses in her own mind about, like, no, I'm actually her, but game over. I mean, that's exactly why your insurance costs so much, is because there's people out there that are doing that to it. Yeah.
All right. Happy news.
This is a good one. This was
is
down in the state of Texas, where there were people handing out food to homeless people. I think they started after a hurricane or something, and the city kept coming after them, saying, like, you can't do this. You're not licensed to do this. We've got a bureaucracy that does this. And then when they fought it all the way to court, and then they couldn't in the town find enough jurors to sit there that wouldn't already say, like, no, I don't think they've broken any laws. So they couldn't even get them into a regular trial.
But yeah, this went past the point of fines and shit. Point of just, like pleading your ticket in front of a judge to they were putting them in front of a jury of their peers, and they couldn't find 12 peers who didn't think that the ticket was absolutely fucking insane. And so, yeah, but you're exactly right. It's just, you can't just give food to people without filling out permit 34-7. And they're like, well, we don't give a shit. We're just going to keep feeding people because we just want to feed them. And then it goes to this point, and so whatever bureaucrats or cops or whatever else that was just feeding them all of these citations along the way, the general population just wanted them to get fucked. So that worked out really nicely. Good for them. Community events. So, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, Sean.
I'm Vance.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I almost did it at one other point. Just for
those of you joining us late,
yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel like he's still with me.
And he might be back next week.
Yes, the ghost of Sean. So I'm not sure if you know about this, Vance. It's funny actually. The blue collar round table, he kept on calling QDM twos. So I guess it's going around. But he's got the Cornerstone coming up at the end of April. Tickets are on sale at Eventbrite, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Details will be in the show notes, though. But it's on Saturday, April 27th in Lloyd. Full day event, 2 meals. It's going to be Chuck Prodnick, Chris Sims, Tom Longo, Alex Craner, Curtis Stone. And I think he's still trying to line up one more other person. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a big lineup. And there's going to be, I don't know, I'll be there. Are you coming up for it?
No, and I'll tell you why. And I think this is actually a credit to Sean. When he was originally planning this, he was talking about it being called Ungovernable, and we've talked a ton about this. And I keep telling him, I take what you are doing here really seriously, and I think a lot of the people that'll be coming will take it really seriously. And I can't make it because I have another engagement, but he was talking about, bringing all these people in, trying to figure out how are we going to go into the next, in the next few years, how can we, be sovereign? How can we raise our own food and make sure we're keeping track of our community. I think it's a really powerful event, and I think good on him for pulling it forward.
I completely agree on everything. And that was that the discussion you guys had when he was on your show?
Yeah, where I was
Yes.
saying, one day I'm going to be coming
Yeah.
across the border to go to a Sean Newman
Right. Yes.
presents, and they're going to be like, "Sir, why don't you step over here into this office over here?"
Yeah.
I thought and Sean always kind of blows it off, but I think like what's gone on with his show, with this show, talking about things that ordinarily would have just gotten swept under the rug, it's a big deal, and it's creating a community of people that are trying to make their community better. So I'm glad he's putting it forward.
Yes. And so, by the way, if anybody doesn't already know, Vance Crow has a very interesting podcast. He has this real knack for asking great questions, and it brings out, like he'll have. I was texting you a few weeks ago, and I was like, talking about how you had that Irishman on there who was the head chef, and then eventually became the guy running that country club. And I looked at the description and I'm like, oh great, he's gonna talk to an Irish chef. Like, is this just gonna be a whole bunch of different ways to cook potatoes? Like, how could this possibly be interesting? And then I was like, this is really good. And so yeah, it's I really quite like what you do with the podcast and how you really bring out really interesting conversations.
Well, thanks,
So
man. I
anyway,
appreciate it. Yeah, and you've been on the podcast. Sean's been on
yeah.
the podcast. It's great. I always just talk to people that have deep knowledge in some area. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just they know about stuff that other people don't know about.
Yes. And so Marwayne, Aaron Goodvin, June 22nd. I can't remember what his opening act is. The Turtleford Walk and Run. So that's where the Turtleford story came from. That's why we told that fun story at the start about the didgeridoo. Walk and Run fundraiser, May 11th. So if you're interested and in or around the area, 1, 3, or 5 kilometer walk and run. And it's for MS. Every step counts 2024 gmail.com. Or talk to Mackenzie Bloom, 639-844-7101, or mackenzie.bloom at outlook.com. Outlook is the name of another town in Saskatchewan, but it's also the name of a Microsoft program. Now, I had an interesting conversation with somebody who got me in touch with a guy in Erskine, just outside of Stettler, Alberta. So more or less, like if you were going to pick the exact middle spot between where I am and where Sean is, it's pretty close to this. And he sends me this awesome write-up. I was like, well, if you guys are ever doing anything, let me know and I'll talk about it on the show. And by the way, if you're having a fishing derby, don't tell me about it the week afterwards and be like, oh, it was great. We should have asked you to talk about it on the Mashup. Ask me before so we could talk about your fishing derby. Justin. So March 10th to 17th, Erskine Men's Bonspiel 3-sheet rink with in a hamlet with just over 300 people. We'll get 40 teams. Have food for curlers included in entry fee, and non-curlers can eat for a fee from March 13th to 16th. Full kitchen available all week, serving burgers, chicken fingers, onion rings, and French fries. Wednesday wing night, they cook roughly 200 pounds of wings from 6 p.m. to midnight or later. As well, Stettler Dodge puts on Drink for the Rink, where they donate $1 for every drink sold up to $500. Rink gets half the money and give away the other half to someone there that prize night. Thursday, they have pizza night. Friday, fried chicken, salads, and buns. Saturday, roast beef supper. They have raffle prizes all week consisting of backpack full of tools, 22 or small rifle. I assume you're going to need a PAL. Smoker, new windshield, tickets to Old McDonald's Music Festival, and more to come. Silent auction of a 10-hour John Deere combine demo from Brant Stettler. Silent auction on gas-driven water pump used for filling sprayers from Spray Trailer. April 20th for the second time, bringing real Canadian wrestling from Calgary to the curling rink. They've got a wrestling event happening in this curling rink in April. They
On
had
the ice?
No, the ice will be gone by that point. Had them in October, and 253 people came. They're going to sell 300 tickets this time. May 24th to 25th. This is a big one. They have a cornhole tournament in the curling rink. Last year, they had over 150 teams Friday night's a competitive division, starts and ends that night. Non-competitive plays one game Friday and then finishes Saturday. Supper and dance Saturday after all the games are finished. This Fire and Ice with I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, these guys, this curling rink in kind of the middle of nowhere, punches way above their weight. They put on all these cool events, and there's a whole bunch of them coming up that we're going to be talking about. I'll probably just gloss over some of the details, but there's the big synopsis of it. And we'll talk about them a little bit more as things move forward. And Fire and Ice with William Mackis in Calgary, March 16th. And I had put this on here because I was going to make fun of it and be like, oh, hurry up and get your tickets because they're going to sell out soon. Jan Arden and Rick Mercer are going to be in Calgary on May 22nd. And just out of morbid curiosity so that I could poke fun at it, I went and looked up the seating thing. There's like 50 tickets left. It's almost sold out. I can't believe it. It's crazy. So I guess joke's on me because I was going to mock it for just being a shit show. Because Jan Arden, I don't know if you know this or not. Do you know who Jan Arden is? So a one-hit wonder from Canada, which is, also in Canada, we've got these broadcasting standards where I think like a quarter of the music played has to be Canadian. So she's already in this favorable environment. One-hit wonder. She wrote a song about being dumped in the 90s. And
wait, was that Insensitive? I know that song. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So basically, her entire claim to fame rests on the fact that she couldn't work out a regular fitness regimen. And now she is doing a show with Rick Mercer, and I assume it's all just being piggybacked off Rick Mercer. But yeah. So anyway, coming soon to a town near you. And that's it. That's what we got, folks.
Yeah, Mashup 96 in the bag. I was really proud to sit in for Sean. I listen to this particular show every single week religiously. So tomorrow morning when I don't wake up to exercise because I'm up so late tonight, I won't be listening to this episode, but I'm really proud to have sat in Sean's seat.
Man, it was so great to have you. It's very much appreciated, especially because of the time change difference and you staying up late. I barely made it in time, but such is life.
It's all good, and we will welcome Sean back from the dead next week.
Yes. So, yeah, we're going to have a little seance and maybe get a necromancer. But in the meantime, man, just tons of appreciation. Thanks for this. Thanks for coming out. I'm sure you're going to be on again at some point. Or maybe this just goes so well that we're just like, we don't need Sean anymore.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
We just
kick him out on Tuesday. Yeah. That's probably right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay.